to be clear, this was a significant bust. We are talking about millions of doses of fentanyl, along with other drugs, guns.
Meantime, FBI agents here in Atlanta say they just seized enough drugs to kill millions of people. Atlanta News First, Bridget Spencer is live from the FBI Atlanta field office. And Bridget, fentanyl, that wasn't the only.
Jacob Soboroff reports that a sophisticated international money laundering partnership may be to blame, with deadly.
On paper, the mansion was just another trophy home in Houston. Marble floors, private security, imported cars lined up behind iron gates. But at 5:41 a.m., federal agents noticed something strange. The panic room wasn't built to protect people. It was built to protect evidence. And when the FBI and DEA opened the wall behind it, they found the first clue that this was bigger than one billionaire couple. This wasn't just a raid. It was the collapse of a system. For nearly 7 years, Victor Leong and his wife Elaine Zhou were known in Texas as Quiet Money. They donated to hospitals. They funded scholarships. They hosted private dinners where judges, investors, university officials, and business owners all showed up smiling. Their company, Golden Harbor Logistics, had warehouses in Houston, Dallas, Laredo, and Los Angeles. Officially, they moved medical equipment, restaurant supplies, and imported electronics. Unofficially, federal investigators believed those warehouses were moving something else. Something measured not in boxes, but in tons. The first sign didn't come from a drug bust. It came from a bank compliance officer in Dallas who couldn't explain why a small import company was receiving wires from shell corporations in Panama, Singapore, and Dubai. The amounts were never round. $487,921, $913,064, $2.7 million split across 6 accounts in one afternoon. The money looked messy on purpose. But what bothered the officer most was the memo line: cold storage replacement parts. Again and again, same phrase, different banks, different companies, different cities. That suspicious activity report sat unnoticed for 3 months. Then DEA agents in Laredo stopped a refrigerated truck near the border. Inside were crates labeled frozen seafood. The paperwork matched. The driver's log matched. Even the temperature readings matched. But one agent tapped the rear panel and heard the wrong sound. Behind the insulation was a sealed compartment. Inside it, 300 pounds of fentanyl pills, methamphetamine, and vacuum-packed heroin. The driver claimed he had no idea. And at first, agents almost believed him. Because the truck wasn't registered to a cartel. It was registered to a food distributor connected to Golden Harbor Logistics. That name changed everything. Within 48 hours, the FBI's Houston field office opened a financial crimes investigation. The DEA opened a trafficking case. ICE Homeland Security investigations joined because the import routes crossed ports, borders, and customs databases. The DOJ didn't call it a cartel case. Not yet. They called it a commercial laundering structure. That sounded boring. It wasn't. Because every time investigators followed a shipment, they found another layer. A warehouse in Dallas that received baby formula and shipped out cash-packed furniture. A storage facility in San Antonio paid for by a company with no employees. A private aviation service in Sugar Land that billed flights to medical charities that didn't exist. Then came the first human story. A 19-year-old student named Maribel Rios overdosed in Austin after taking what she thought was a study pill. Her roommate told investigators Maribel bought it from another student near campus. That student said he got it from a delivery driver. The driver said the pills came inside restaurant supply boxes. And those boxes traced back to a warehouse leased by Golden Harbor. That was the moment the case changed. This was no longer paperwork. This was blood. The FBI pulled phone records. The DEA mapped delivery routes. ICE analysts compared container arrivals at the Port of Houston. And a pattern emerged. Every major shipment arrived after a wire transfer. Every warehouse movement followed a coded invoice. Every time law enforcement seized product on one route, another route opened within days. Someone inside the system was warning them. But nobody knew who. For months, Victor and Elaine stayed untouchable. They appeared at charity events. They posed beside mayors. They gave interviews about immigrant success, business discipline, and family values. Victor always spoke softly. Elaine almost never spoke at all. But investigators noticed something strange. She signed most of the trust documents. She controlled the family office. She approved property purchases. And the mansion in Houston's River Oaks wasn't just their home. It was the center of the network. That mansion had 14 bedrooms, 2 kitchens, an underground garage, a private theater, and a wine cellar with biometric locks. Agents watched delivery vans enter the property at night and leave lighter than they arrived. They watched accountants visit for exactly 22 minutes. They watched a former customs broker enter through the back gate twice in 1 week. Then came the mid-twist. The federal leak wasn't inside the FBI. It wasn't inside the DEA. It was inside a private shipping compliance firm contracted by multiple port businesses. A consultant named Andrew Keene had access to inspection schedules, flagged containers, and customs review notes. Every time a container tied to Golden Harbor was likely to be searched, Keene allegedly warned the network. Sometimes the shipment was delayed. Sometimes it was rerouted. Sometimes the contents vanished before inspectors ever arrived. He wasn't carrying drugs. He was carrying information. And information was worth millions. The FBI flipped one of Golden Harbor's bookkeepers after agents found her name on 3 shell companies. She was terrified, not of prison, of Elaine Zhou. She told investigators Victor was the face. Elaine was the architect. According to her, Elaine built the laundering system through luxury real estate, art auctions, fake consulting contracts, and private loans. Drug money entered as cash. Cash became invoices. Invoices became investments. Investments became clean wealth. By the time the money reached the family office, it looked like profit. That's how $1.2 billion moved through the system without looking like $1.2 billion in crime. The final warrant took 94 pages. It listed bank accounts, properties, vehicles, encrypted devices, warehouse units, storage lockers, and aircraft records. The DOJ wanted the raid coordinated across Texas, California, Illinois, and New York. But the center was still Houston. The mansion. The wall. The room nobody outside the family was allowed to enter. At 5:41 a.m., FBI tactical teams breached the front gate. DEA agents hit 2 warehouses in Dallas. ICE agents moved on a freight office near the port of Houston. At the mansion, security guards dropped their weapons before the first flashbang finished, echoing across the driveway. Inside, agents found Victor in a robe, standing near the staircase, repeating one sentence: "You have the wrong house." Elaine was not downstairs. She was in the panic room. But the panic room door was already closing. For 18 minutes, agents negotiated through steel. Then a technician found the override panel hidden behind a painting. When the door opened, Elaine was seated at a desk with 3 phones, 2 laptops, and a shredder still warm. Behind her was a false wall. Behind that wall was the discovery that made the entire raid explode. Stacks of vacuum-sealed cash, gold bars, hard drives, ledgers, passports, and a server rack still running. One agent later described the room as a bank vault pretending to be a closet. But the drugs weren't in the mansion. That was the next reveal. The 4.5 tons were split across the network. A warehouse in Dallas held meth inside industrial printer crates. A refrigerated unit outside Laredo held fentanyl pills sealed behind insulation panels. A storage facility near Houston held heroin hidden inside marble slabs. A shipment in Los Angeles contained cocaine packed into machine parts. The total weight, roughly 9,000 pounds. 4.5 tons. Enough to flood multiple states. Enough to destroy families who would never know the names Victor Liang or Elaine Zhou. By noon, federal agents had seized more than $380 million in cash, crypto wallets, luxury watches, art, vehicles, and property records. But the larger number came from financial tracing. $1.2 billion. That was the estimated value of the laundering pipeline. Not in one suitcase. Not in one account. Across companies, charities, warehouses, loans, and investments. A criminal machine disguised as legitimate success. And then came the deepest cut. Investigators found scholarship funds tied to universities in Texas and California. Some were real. Students had received money. But the accounts also moved millions through education partnerships that never existed. A second human story emerged from Houston. A single father named Terrence Bell had worked nights at one of the warehouses for 6 months. He thought he was loading restaurant equipment. He needed the job because his daughter had medical bills. When agents interviewed him, he broke down after seeing photos of the hidden compartments. He said one thing over and over: "I carried that." That was the cruelty of the system. Most people inside it didn't know what they were part of. Drivers thought they were moving food. Students thought they were buying pills. Warehouse workers thought they were earning rent money. Banks thought they were processing business income. And the couple at the top kept smiling at charity galas. The final realization for investigators was darker than the drugs or the money. The system worked because it borrowed trust. Trust in ports. Trust in banks. Trust in universities. Trust in charity. Trust in successful people with polished speeches and expensive lawyers. Victor Liang had built the image. Elaine Zhou had built the machine. And Andrew Keene, the insider, had kept the doors open just long enough for the network to grow beyond Texas. By the time the DOJ unsealed the indictment, 42 people were charged. Not all were masterminds. Some were drivers. Some were accountants. Some were shell company directors paid to sign documents they never read. But at the center were Victor and Elaine, the billionaire couple who turned logistics into a shadow empire. The mansion was sealed. The warehouses were emptied. The accounts were frozen. But the question investigators couldn't answer publicly was the one that mattered most. How many shipments got through before the first one was ever stopped? Because 4.5 tons was only what they found. $1.2 billion was only what they could trace. And systems like this rarely disappear overnight. They fracture. They rename themselves. They move to another warehouse, another port, another company with clean paperwork and a polished website. That's why this case hit differently. It wasn't just about a mansion in Texas. It was about how crime can hide behind success, how danger can move through ordinary systems, and how the most powerful people in the room are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are the ones signing documents quietly. Sometimes they are the ones funding scholarships. Sometimes they are standing beside a hospital wing with their name on the wall. And sometimes, behind that wall, federal agents find the truth. If a system like this can exist inside institutions people trust, what does that say about everything we don't see?